Okay, so now moving on to, now Piers, we've got you here, and I'm aware that you've come in specially for this, for item, getting to the item number, item 13, the Asset Management Improvement Programme. So I'll invite you to the table for item 13. We'll move to that item now. So this is the regular 6-monthly report. I'll just make the comment that this is an excellent report, and thank you for it. I'm aware that you're no longer with the organisation, but thank you for the commitment that you're showing in coming back to speak to this work today. And thank you for the work that you've done in the time that you were with us, and for the excellent report that you're presenting this morning. So
thank you very much.
I understand that you've got a brief presentation, and then we'll move to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words. Right, I'll jump in it just under cognizant of time. I'm going to take the report as read, but I just wanted to bring your attention to some of the pieces of work that the team have more recently closed out. And I know there's a lot of acronyms, but you love me for the acronyms, and I'll try and keep it short on that. Under those projects, BIM, Building Information Management, this is really Asset Information 2.0. It's coming. Council's very much ahead of the curve as far as its thinking as a result of this project, and it was a collaborative piece of work across the organisation, 6 separate work streams, and it's going to continue to build on its capability, and the demand in this area is going to continue as well. So we've got a really great foundation in place. A lot of the design mechanisms that we spend a significant amount of investment in are going to be supported by this piece of work. On to the next one, AAIF. You've heard me talk about this acronym, the Asset Assessment Intervention Framework. This is planning and risk management. It's a huge step forward for not only Three Waters at Council here, but it's also, in my opinion, it is a class-leading piece of work across the country. Certainly in my new role, this is something that we're looking at as to how we can support with other councils in that space. So it's finished. The opportunity really is in how you look at AAIF and other parts of the organisation, and I know that the conversations, certainly between Lynn and myself and the team previously, have been really focused on that. Blueworks. Blueworks is a piece of work that really comes to the core of a lot of the way that I've looked at councils' behaviours with contractors and extracting contract value. I want to see information about our assets going from the contractor to our systems direct, not through a contractor's system. And this piece of work is really at the first step for us, and it was a collaborative effort between Three Waters and Parks, which in and of itself is a great shift in the way that the teams are looking at these holistic opportunities. So this is around asset information direct into council, and I hope that the other teams that I know, like facilities, that are currently watching this, and it's just about in its closeout phase now, hence I've put it in the finished bucket. We've cleared out the Asset Management Maturity Assessment. So this is our external review that I've presented both to Audit and Risk and to Finance and Performance Committee in other areas. It's the 3rd consecutive improvement that we've had. It's externally run, it's independent, and it's handled as a watermark benchmark for the organisation to understand how it's shifted. Last but by no means least, we have better asset management plans. They're not perfect, but they certainly have now become consistently applied across each one of the asset owning areas. And for me, one of the things that I fought long and hard for is to make those typically internal documents public. And we now have them sitting on our public website. So that's now bringing a lot of accountability to the way that we manage the assets from a public viewpoint for those that want to read them. Right, moving on, we're also supporting a number of projects, obviously Three Waters reform support. We've got a number of other activities which weren't actually called out, and then that's really supporting facilities and also on the automation of condition and performance reporting. You, as this committee, received that report on average between a year and 18 months, and we're in the process of automating that. That's a really critical piece of work, and I know it's very technical, but what this committee should be interested in is how that is maturing, because that's the fundamental basis through which we make decisions, at least at a technical level. Okay, so current state. So we've talked a little bit about the progress to date since the heady days of November 2015. We've got lots of new capability that's been established in council. Our infrastructure strategy and AMPs are now underpinning our LTP better than they ever were before. And there's still lots of focus. I'm going to talk a little bit about that shortly. And it's really now time to refocus our efforts and resources for what I've termed, and the team's looking at, what a strong 2024 looks like, at least from an asset management perspective. And you can see the progress that has been made, and that bar chart really shows where we started out at with the blue. Some of the areas, it didn't look like we've moved very far, but if you consider the size of the team that's been leading a lot of this activity and the pressure that the asset management teams are on just to run their own business, for me, I'm very proud of those results. It's an organisation-wide shift. In more detail, just to bring to your attention, each one of the teams has a number of different metrics, and that's what that spider diagram. So that's really helping to form some of the opportunity. So where to from here? There are three elements up on the board here. We have improvement plans. These are the improvement areas within the asset management plans themselves. We have a maturity assessment that I referenced before, and underpinning that is our strategic response around our infrastructure strategy. And for me, that's obviously very close to my heart, the climate response strategy. And that's really how the teams are currently refactoring and refocusing how the program's going to be built over the coming years based on those three main areas. What are we looking at here? What got us here is not going to get us there. So where does there and what does there look like? So what are you looking at on here, which is fundamentally a program scope and time chart? The red line that you're looking at really talks about the previous 5 years that myself and the various teams have been involved with. It's been a very technically focused piece of work. And rightly so. I don't make any apologies for that. You need to understand what you own, where is it, and what condition is it in. And so the teams have been heavily focused on trying to get some of those basics in place. Over the past probably 6 to 12 months, we've initiated some conversations with Naitahu to understand the two universes of what asset management and partnership really look like. And that's being developed through a number of initiatives, and with Lynn joining the organisation, I'm pretty confident that's going to continue to grow. So what does that mean for us? Well, okay, we've been operating in the technical domain. I want to see a shift, at least if I put my council hat on from previous existence. I want to see a shift from the purely technical focus that the teams have been looking at into a more societal and partnership-based approach. That societal aspect, which is growing at the moment around our climate resilience and our partnership opportunities, give us the framework to build on that technical capability. The technical stuff is never going to go away. You need it as a fundamental basis, but the opportunity for council as the organisation and the city is really around building that understanding of how asset management underpins societal investment. Not, for me, it's not today, and it sounds almost trite to say it, but it is for the tomorrow generations that we've got in there. The investments today lead on. So underpinning all of those three areas is a shift in our thinking. We're very dollar-driven. Council's very dollar-driven, as it needs to be. It needs to be fiscally responsible. But as we move from a purely technical-based approach within the asset management function, the two dominant areas for me, which are obviously climate and social capital. And you can see that as we start introducing those concepts more strongly and build on the technical capability, we start looking at how do we put climate and social at the forefront of our investment, and you need the asset management capability within that to be able to help invest in the right areas, or at least form part of the argument for it. So program Refocus, well, I think this has come out of order at the moment, but I'm going to go through. Here we go. Right, so more fully incorporate climate resilience and partnerships into asset management strategies and the approach that we take. We want to review the internal steering groups, reporting and accountability, of which finance and performance and audit and risk play a really significant role in that. You are part of the system, as we refer to it in the asset management world. Obviously, the clarification, of roles and responsibilities is really important, and that strategic risk review process is underway. We've had risk around asset management, but this is really taking a more strategic look to the whole organisation's approach to this function. And then obviously preparing for what that strong 2024 looks like is a catchphrase to try and help align the teams to what we're actually here to do and project a little bit further out from the end of the year or less. So what does it look like? Infrastructure strategy delivery report, that's really how do we execute against the components in there. Climate resilience in all its different guises is fully embedded not only within the asset management plans themselves, but in the ethos of those asset managers and planners. Obviously, the acid test for me is that councillor and ELT have confidence in the activities that have been delivered over the next 3 years in that space. We need a network of confident asset management staff. It's a pretty competitive environment out there at the moment. These are the boys and girls that look after the investment. Billions of dollars of investment in infrastructure really stem from a lot of their activities and engagement. Iwi partnership in asset management and planning is developing, continues to gain momentum, and that both sides of the argument understand where the value proposition is, both in the function and also for the organisations in place. I'm not going to mention the 3-letter acronym there. However, there are improvements within our technical domain, and that program of work is underway at the moment. The teams are trying to drive the scope and value proposition out of that. It's a complex environment and certainly going to need some fairly clever people to continue developing that. Obviously, data and information maturity is improved, and that's where your maturity assessments come in and are critically important to that, to ensure that you have a finger on the pulse through audit and risk. And our valuations framework. Now, if you recall, we had a big valuation shift in Three Waters. Why? Fundamentally because the teams refactored in the way that they look at the valuation of assets. And that's a huge opportunity. It's a $3 billion shift. There's still a lot of work to be done in valuations and a lot of opportunity, and that fits into the improvements around some of our technical capability. And we have a revised risk framework implemented. So, I suppose in closing, good night from me, good night from him. I love watching the two Ronnies. First off, thank you to councillors and to the Mayor for the engagement and interest that you have provided these past years. You are part of the team that delivers this. You're the system, you're the framework that helps provide that visibility. I know that from talking from other councils, asset management does not get the airtime that this council allows and is interested within. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you very much indeed. So moving to any questions, Pauline.
Thank you. That's a really interesting report. I'm just looking at 3.6, where we're saying we're progressing projects and initiatives to improve the asset management maturity of the council in collaboration with Transport, Three Waters, Resource Recovery, Parks, Facilities and IT. So obviously you're meaning that by looking at these things holistically all together, we will be finding efficiencies and savings and ease of delivery. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think from the SAP improvement program, the opportunity really is in how do we manage the expenditure for things like reactive maintenance spend, providing the tool sets for the teams to be able to manage that type of expenditure as a key focus area for the group going forward. And I think that with some of the technology base that's been built on historically with the SAP upgrades, that provides the platform to move forward.
So my question is obviously, if we took the Three Waters out of that equation, does that weaken our ability to find other efficiencies with just what's left? Because that's a very big component of this little family of...
It is. I would probably suggest that the Three Waters management and awareness and capability in that team is at the top end of the scale as far as maturity across the organisation. So Three Waters moving out of that, whilst there's a big expenditure in there, those teams are in some areas much more mature in understanding how that money is spent.
So do you have strong confidence in the City Council's Three Waters program of delivery and expertise?
Yes is the short version. That from a maturity perspective and in the asset management function, they certainly do have some of the best brains in the country in that space. We're very lucky to have some of the team working within the council for that. So yes.
Right, thank you. And just one more, you didn't actually dwell on this, and I think you could have on page 140. Congratulations were passed on to the AAIF project team as they were selected as finalists in several awards.
Yeah.
The awards have come from many places, but you've put three notable ones there: Engineering Innovations, Institution of Public Works Engineering Australasia, and Infrastructure Commission Te Waihanga Infrastructure Asset Owners Survey. I mean, that's incredible.
It's great. I mean, it was a long, very challenging piece of work.
Yeah.
And the piece of work in and of itself was great, but for me, the shift in the way that the teams looked more holistically at the information that they had and understand how governance actually has to make decisions around that and effectively take the engineering staff and say, virtually, you need to come and sit around this table and then start reflecting back how you put opportunities in front of governance. That was the shift for them to understand that. Okay, they do the technical stuff within it and provide the tools and capability, but it was that mind shift as to how council have to make decisions and the challenges that you have of balancing. So really, really, really proud of that piece of work.
Thank you. And just one more, if I may. These projects that you outlined, the BIM, the AAIF, the Blue Works, the AMMA and the AMPs, considerable work has gone into designing all those programs and things. And you might not be able to answer this, but Lynn might be able to. Has that costing been added to the value of our Three Waters assets? I mean, that looks to me like a considerable amount of investment in design and research.
So I can probably comment a little bit about on that. So the funding model for those projects really came purely from the people that I had in my team and within the asset management team, within Three Waters, for instance, or within facilities or wherever it happens to be. So the projects and programs did not have specific allocated budget. I had a team to help work with those teams to drive that. And I think one of the opportunities, certainly within annual plan and LTP cycles, is to ask where are the improvement budgets being identified and to prioritise that, because that's how you get ahead of the curve. Otherwise, the teams are forced to try and find budget from other areas. And I think there's a maturity step in there for council to be able to clearly identify improvement budgets.
Thank you. Excellent.
Leanne.
It took a while for the development of the work program around in this space to transition out of Skirt and into the council. Is that right?
Probably it was. We had the initial cut of the program around about June, July of 2016, and that was that really came about from the three word space, which was identify the opportunities, transfer them into council, and then adopt. And the adoption really was the value derivation for the stuff that came from Skirt, and that was relatively quickly, probably 6 to 8 months, I think, from woe to go.
Yeah, but there were integration issues around the different programs.
There were, and that was part of where my focus was initially, and then in the role of head of asset management, that's where we started looking at how do we integrate with some of the IT program, what are the work programs going on within council, and how do we actually build that into the program of work.
So in terms of a lesson learned, and I think we had that in the lesson learned report from the Skirt project or the closeout, was that building that into the capability of the council from the outset would have been probably more helpful.
Yeah, I think that if, God forbid, that we have another earthquake, the thinking should be that how is council set to be able to respond to that, not just from its people and its business, but around its systems and its capability. Because at the time when I joined Skirt, there were a lot of challenges in being able to integrate that capability into an alliance that was moving at that speed. And fundamentally, it was just not possible to deal with that. And that's something that council may want to think about in the coming years, how to prepare systems and capability for a significant event.
And we'll certainly share that with others as well, because I fret about Wellington on a constant basis. The other one that that I was just thinking of was that with respect to this whole approach, I think when you first started reporting on it, I think where you started and where you've got to now, there's now an understanding in the organisation how important it is to look at that whole of asset life,
Yeah.
and to have a complete, I love this phrase, a single source of truth for appropriate, timely and accurate information about our assets that will support evidence-based decision making. When I arrived, I sort of got the impression that it was on a schedule, and so then when it came up on the schedule for renewals, the contractor would go out and have a look. The contractor who'll get the work if it needs to be done, and surprise, so this system just seems to be a better understanding, integrated right throughout the organisation.
Yeah, correct.
So it will survive your departure.
It will, and I'm confident that there will be opportunities in transport and facilities around that type of thinking. The opportunity is, how do we take that type of thinking that was developed in Three Waters and reflect it within the way that we invest in other asset owning areas?
Yeah, because I think sometimes people on the outside looking in don't see the significance.
No.
And so I just want to say thank you very much for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yanni.
I think, and sorry, I can't recall the name, but the presentation we had around the risk attached to asset management, I thought was really enlightening, and fundamentally I think we had a discussion at the time, that was for a very specific role that we hired that person to come in, provide the advice. But it seemed to me that that advice was really raising the concern around how we prioritise based on asset management and risk, to the point that you made about building a whole bunch of new nice stuff versus fixing the stuff that's broken and costing us a fortune. What's the kind of next step in that risk assessment process in terms of informing us at a governance level around the priorities for spending?
I think the next step in that area is to let me take a step back. So this is around the program of work that's being refactored at the moment. So all the opportunities that came out of that report, we can't do all of them. What we can do is that we're now identifying where some of the demand areas are. And so, for instance, within facilities and condition reporting for structures, making sure that framework is consistent across the whole organisation. It's not just about investing in a particular vertical, as in facilities or transport or Three Waters. It's trying to look at council and the city as a whole around how do we deliver better outcomes for our communities using those assets to deliver the services, and then how during an LTP do you balance the level of service and the asset cost to renew or replace. So the analogy is fix the leaking roof before you put a new television on the wall is the basis. That's where you're going to get your big return on societal shift over the different generations. And there's a balancing act to be had in that. You can't just go and fix all the pipes and all the underground stuff and then neglect what communities are wanting. Pardon? Not necessarily. Maybe get a smaller television. Or actually, maybe I'll tread on a hand grenade on that one. I'll move away from that now. But I guess the balancing act, and I think in answer to your question, it's the refactor of where the risk framework has identified the opportunities that each team's looking within their units, and where my team looks is trying to get that correct balance as to how do we move from some of the nuts and boltsy stuff to a more social capital focused review of opportunities.
But fundamentally, it's much more cost effective to address the things that are requiring a huge ongoing reactive maintenance cost versus building some new roads because it's nice to do, but then ending up with an asset that's deteriorated to a point where it's going to cost way more to fix.
So, absolutely.
Look at the central city.
It's interesting in the
Central city.
Pardon?
Central city. Landings. I mean, whatever you can look at multiple examples.
There is a balance, and you're right. For me and the teams that have worked on this over the last 5 years, I use the mantra OPEX is king. We're a very CapEx focused organisation, but OPEX is, if you can save $1 in OPEX, you can offset $150 in CapEx in there. And that to me is where the focus for the teams is really looking at that. Pauline, I think you asked around the maintenance and operations space. You know, the opportunity that we have within SAP to understand where money is actually being spent and allowing those people that have the delegated authority to spend the money, you give them the tools, you'll find the savings within that space. And that's where some of the program is trying to focus on the financial benefits realizations.
Just another question about the BIM, which is really, really good to see. But are you able just to just help us understand a little bit more about whether that can, like, obviously it's important for design in terms of new things that are being built. Is there any ability to use that sort of framework for existing facilities to get better monitoring?
Yep. So, absolutely. Yeah. So BIM, whether it's for CMUA, whether it is for the art gallery, whether it is for Turanga, wherever, there is retrospective ability to take some of the technologies that we have within that BIM sphere and actually use that. And in the universe that I operate within, we talk BIM to BAM, building information to building asset or structures, asset management. And we've typically used BIM in the delivery of the project. So the town hall was a classic case. Moving on from there, how do we take that information and then allow venues, Otatahi, to manage it more cost effectively and understand where the risks that are coming out, so we can plan. We talk about zero-based budgeting. That's where the rubber hits the road.
All right, thank you. Jimmy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your comprehensive report and your great achievement, particularly over the past several years. Done a great job for both the asset management, from main menu, the status, then to the advanced, further the systemized the program. But one question is particularly mentioned in the paragraph 3.3. You mentioned prepare for realignment of asset management governance, staffing, and reporting structure. I'm particularly concerned. The question is governance, because as a decision maker, mayor, and council, whether you have done those 3 of the 13 has been done. Am I right? There's a systemized the advanced risk base, this program. How we can, to access those asset, the information in a real time situation, rather than still, the current situation, like in the monthly report, we can get some information. How to real time we can get for us to help for the decision making.
Couple of different points to that. The first one is I presented to ELT last Wednesday, specifically around what the next steps are going to look like and allow ELT members to engage with that. And I believe that was received well. As part of the system, that program is going to now be reporting through to ELT on a 6-weekly basis, I think is the current plan or thereabouts. Around the program. And of course, that report through to this committee and also into audit and risk forms part of the visibility that you have, specifically around the type of program and the activities. So where governance at this level sits, it's around ensuring that this type of visibility is maintained. The legacy for me is that we have this conversation at this level. That doesn't happen in a lot of other places. So that's where councillors here can be most influential, is to effectively carry the flame.
Thank you. All right, so we've got a recommendation in front of us to receive the information in the 6 monthly update report. I'm happy to move that. Sarah will second. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Have you got enough to the next one? All right.